Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. And this afternoon, I would like to look at the question, or maybe a series of questions, but let us look at the question. Why do Jamaicans hate the truth? Why are we so patriotic? Why are we so tethered to blind patriotism that we often neglect the truth, even when the truth is staring us within our face? That is something that I would like to pose. I'm not sure, and I think that the psychologist, the psychiatrist, I beg your pardon, and all of these professionals will have to come on board to assess, to examine the reasons for which Jamaicans are so tethered to lies and prefer to hear untruth rather than to confront manfully the unvarnished truth that, should we do that, would allow us to grow and to develop as a nation. Now, we live in a society in which people think that the liquor book the talawa. And because Jamaicans have been able to have cemented their places on the world stage with regard to sports and entertainment, music, dancehall, more specifically reggae, and our prowess at track and field, I think that we are a developed nation and that we are synonymous with the likes of the United States and Canada and Great Britain. I think we do believe that because we are superpowers when it comes on to dance hall music and reggae, and also, to a lesser extent, track and field. And I say to a lesser extent because, the world, track and field is not the number one sports in the world. So even though people might know Usain Bolt and because he remains the 100 meters and 200 meters record holder, but many people do not necessarily follow track and field as do follow baseball and soccer, among other sports. But we have this sort of impression of ourselves that we're so important on the world stage, even though we are living in a poverty-stricken Jamaica. We're living in a country that is predominantly semi-literate to illiterate. We're living in a society that is lawless, where lawlessness reigns supreme. We're living in a society that is unproductive for the most part. It's not productive, and that is why people are complaining about customer service and people's lack of willingness to work. People don't like to work. Well, we can't blame them to a certain extent because of the low wages and salaries that we have in Jamaica. But whatever the reason is, our productivity is very low in Jamaica, right? We also have a society in which people also love antisocial behavior. We do not speak well. We do not speak in a civil manner. We think that loudness, rawness, boorishness, and incivility should be the order of the day. And if you don't behave like that, you're strange and you are going to be called names. The podcasts that are coming out of Jamaica, for the most part, you have a few decent ones, maybe not intellectual, but decent, who are trying to the best of their abilities to disseminate truth and to disseminate what they know. Right? So you can't, bash them for doing that. However, for the most part, if you are not crude and crass and boorish and ghetto, you are not going to get the views and the likes from Jamaicans. So it should tell you a lot. It tells you a lot about our semi-literate to almost illiterate society, a society that does not seek to embrace decency and law and order. We don't like that. We like to live in this very dark society in which anything goes. But let us look at our economy. And even the other day when they told us that the poverty rate is down, somebody was suggesting to me, what biometrics am I using to decipher that the poverty rate cannot or could not have declined? He's suggesting that what biometrics I'm using. Now, what does it have to do with biometrics? There are some self-evident truths Truth is, Black people are equal to any man on the earth. Now, does it suggest because I see black people wallowing, Africans wallowing in poverty, does it mean that Black people are not equal to whites? No, I have to look at the factors because what the naked eyes are seeing. What factors have contributed to Africa being a poor continent for the most part? I have to assess those factors, and then I come up with a conclusion. When you go to Jamaica and you look with your naked eyes, the poverty is also overwhelming there. It's overwhelming, the poverty. The poverty is overwhelming. You don't see a lot of times people who are surviving decently. And we're not saying that they have to be wealthy and they have to live in big mansions. That is not what my understanding of prosperity means. Okay? I am saying that they have the basic necessities of life. And many of our people cannot afford the basic necessities of life. When you have people, which the gangs have recruited, some of whom they're paying 100,000 Jamaican dollars to kill someone. And I understand that it's even lower in some cases. Sometimes it's 10,000, which is not much money, right? But people are paying people because of the level of economic desperation that people are able to do that. Of course, they're evil too. To be able to take a gun because someone is paying you to kill somebody is, of course, utter evil. Okay? But how could our poverty rate be going down when we have a population that is, for the most part, uneducated, unsophisticated, largely unskilled? Productivity is low. The dollar is worthless. People, have to confront a high cost of living, yet our poverty rate is down. How could that be so? I don't care what metrics you're using. That cannot be true. So why are we now thinking that that is true? Because the government says so. Okay? We also have a murder rate that we have been dealing with for years, decades. Jamaica is known to be one of the most murderous countries in the world. Yet, during an election year and just a run up before the election year last year, the murder rate miraculously, magically started to trend down. Now, it's not that people like myself would not be happy that the murder rate is trending down, but people like myself who are thinkers, who are able to assess things and do not take things just because at face value, right? We do not take things at face value because we are critical thinkers. Now, given that the government, for all the years that it has been in power, for the past 9, 10 years, that's the JLP government, we're not able to bring down crime and violence all these 10 years using the same method, the state of emergency. And people are telling me, well, because they got a few police cars and perhaps a few more guns and a few more cameras, that is why they're controlling crime right now. So why didn't they do that 2017, 18, 19, 20? And I was suggesting that during the pandemic, when the nation was locked down for the most part and people were in their houses, that was the time now to look at gangsterism in Jamaica and to have dismantled the garrison constituencies and the gangs which are affiliated with them. However, what we need to understand is that the government is also, and private sector business interests are also involved in that trafficking, in that gangsterism, the culture of gangsterism in Jamaica. And that is how they make their money. Now, the same thing happens in the United States, in Canada, and the world at large. You're not seeing these people on Wall Street and they just inherited these big corporations and are wealthy because they're productive. Many of them are unproductive, but they are channeling their monies and their wealth through unsavory practices and are literally in bed with criminals. It is just amazing to see our countries, whether it's Mexico, it's Ecuador, it's Colombia. We can call these states a narco state in which guns and drugs flow like water. And what is happening is that we sow the wind and we're reaping the whirlwind of crime and violence. But people, because they love money, and the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. We don't want to face up in Jamaica to the fact that the murder rate does not just have to do with some guys in Raytown, but it's an indelibly cemented organization and industry in Jamaica. And that you have men who are dressed in suits and who wear their suits nicely and who speak intelligently and in a refined manner are a part of that, are involved in that sort of industry. We don't want to also confront that truth because that truth makes us uncomfortable. And I can understand that. Many of the truths that I am declaring to you years ago when I had to confront these truths, and my school wasn't teaching me these things, I had to go and delve into these things. I wasn't having discussion in the classroom about these things because they're not going to tell you these things. You have to find good books, good journals to read, good magazines to read and to follow and to compare the truths that you are gathering. I had to confront these truths. They were very painful. Sometimes I had to sit on the toilet because I could not believe what I was reading. But the more I looked at the world and I see how the world is structured, I had to confront that this is truth, that this is truth. But Jamaicans know. What you want to hear are wonderful utopic stories of people living well in Jamaica, returning residents, and they've gone back home and they've built their mansions and they're vlogging to you. And I'm not suggesting to you that these are not good things. Yes, there are individuals in Jamaica who are doing well, and we applaud them for doing well. And we ought not to also disregard the fact that they're doing well. There are some people, their minds are so evil that because they're not doing well, they want others not to do well. Well, I am not like that. I am happy for those in Jamaica who are doing well. What I'm suggesting, however, the ones who are doing well, the few, because not the many, it's just not the many, the few in Jamaica who are doing well ought not also to disregard the realities of those who are not doing well. And yes, some are lazy, but the large majority are people who cannot find a job, a decent job. Why? Because our society has not been productive. When last have we ever grown productively? And don't tell me about the 5% growth in 2022 or 23, whenever we had it, because that was a false growth. It was a for growth. That was for growth. I am talking about industries, industrial growth, where we have industries, and we deindustrialized during the 1990s. And all we're selling are bonds, and we believe in this sort of paper money, investing in all of these bonds and paper money and government money. That is what we believe in. And then, of course, merged with the drug trade and the trafficking of arms. That is how the wealthy in Jamaica get their money, and the United States and all the world by extension. We have deindustrialized. One thing that we can learn from China is the fact that they, opposite to what we have done in the West, they are doing, have done what we did, what the West did in the 18th and 19th century, into the early 20th century, right? We have not continued with that sort of industrialization. We have deindustrialized, and we placed the industries into the hands of what the West formally declared as an enemy, into the hands of China, which once the United States touted to, and even now, touted to be an enemy. But how is it an enemy when you have elite American industrialists, capitalists, investing billions of dollars into the Chinese economy? Right? The Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks of the world, they invest in China. Yet we hear that there is a global trade war between, or there's a, yeah, between China and the United States. And we're wondering, who is fighting against whom? Right? Who is really fighting against whom? And how are we enmeshed in this situation? But we are. Now, they're not fighting on behalf of us. They're fighting on behalf of their capital interests. And this is what we have to understand. This is what we have to understand. Americans have been waking up to some extent, some of them, not all of them, to understand that this grandiose military apparatus that the United States has built up over the years is not meant to defend them and to protect them, but is also an industry in which they can practice their gangster capitalism. Have you heard the term? Gangster capitalism. If you do not do what we tell you, then we're going to beat you up and we're going to create wars. And if you don't, then we are going to bomb your citizens. Simple as that. You have to do that which we tell you to do. And yesterday I was reading an article in one of these papers in which the journalist was suggesting that the United States is saying to Russia that if you do not do what we wanted to do in terms of coming to a peace agreement with the Ukraine, that we're going to impose further sanctions on you. Could be up to 200% tariff. I think it was 500 if I'm not lying. 500% tariff. Do you know how strenuous that would be economically for Russia? But the United States is saying that if you do not do what we tell you to do, that is what we are going to do to your economy and to your people. This is the reality of the United States of America. It's no longer the country that you think is democratic. It hasn't been since 1947, when the National Security Act was actually put into place. Right? It hasn't been. And for years, Americans thought that they were living in a republic, in what they called a democratic republic. But they're finding out now, at least some are, their eyes are opening up to the fact, to the reality, to the truth that America is an empire. Now, for years, she pretended to have been a democratic republic. But people are now finding out that she is not. Right? That she is a gangster republic, a gangster democracy, if you will. That is what people are finding out now. Aren't Americans patriotic? Yes, they are patriotic, but they have to also confront the truth. Jamaica, we are a poor state, we are insignificant on the world stage, yet we don't want to confront the truth. We don't want to confront the truth. What we want to hear are wonderful things about us, that we are growing. And it would be nice to hear that we are growing. And I'm wondering, and I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist, but I'm wondering if maybe 80% of Jamaican population is suffering from trauma, from economic and psychological trauma. We haven't grown, so we have to pretend as if we are growing. And perhaps the politicians give, I should say, let's be fair to them. They perhaps are suffering from trauma too. They know they can't solve the problems that bedevil Jamaica. They know they can't solve the social and economic problems because they are entrenched. Some of them are now cultural problems. They've been there for years that I don't know if they can ever be resolved, if they can ever be eradicated. Because look at the whole concept of poverty. It is so much aligned with Jamaica now, so much deeply entrenched, deeply embedded into our psyche that Jamaica is poor and we're sufferer. And because we have that psychological trauma and we have acclimated our minds to thinking that way, that it is what it is. And I don't know how we can blot that sort of thinking out of our minds. So it is very natural for us to be poor. It is natural for us to speak uneducated. It is natural for us. It is Jamaican to be lawless, not to form lines, not to be decent, not to show courtesy on the roads, right? It is Jamaican. But we don't want to confront these realities. And if somebody goes to Jamaica, a foreigner, and they complain about what they see, we begin to rush them. We begin to say, no, go back to your country because Jamaica is a wonderful country. Even though we know that many people in Jamaica are scared to live in Jamaica because of the high levels of insecurity on the island. We know that, but we don't want to confront that. We don't want to confront that. The whole matter of language and culture, we also don't want to confront that. We don't want to confront the fact that we were once slaves. We say that because we cry victimhood. Every time we talk about slavery is because we're crying victimhood, that we're victims of slavery. So we're expecting that the white man will give us something, some reparations here or there. And I'm not suggesting that reparations should not be applicable, because they should be, having exploited human labor, the labor of our ancestors. I believe in that. But what I don't believe in is the fact that we are not trying also as we can to build ourselves up, to clean up, and to use the limited resources that we have to do the best that we can do. Because the corruption that is so endemic in Jamaica, let us say that tomorrow Great Britain should give us reparations of $200 billion or pounds sterling, right? Do you think the politicians would use that money wisely? I don't think so. They would be dividing that huge sums of money with their business interests and their friends, right? Domestic and international. They would not be using that money for the most part to build Jamaica, because all through the years, they have not respected the citizens of Jamaica. And that is why we have the second rate of brain drain in the world. Now, how can you have an economy in which poverty has declined, poverty has been halved, according to PIOJ, that's the Private Institute of Jamaica, and the Prime Minister. These were the assertions made by the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the PIOJ, that poverty rate in Jamaica has been halved. And people believe it. I'm not saying everybody believes it, but the majority of Jamaicans, particularly those who are on the JLP side. Now, what I'm suggesting here, I am not on JLP side. I am not also on Mark Golding's side. I am on the development side. I would like to see Jamaica developed. However, and I'm not a pessimist, right? I believe I'm an optimist, and I continue to be an optimist until I die. However, when we look at decades of economic, social, political stagnation, I don't know if at this juncture of our history we can build. I don't know. Because I think what we have now is what is equivalent to a stage 4 cancer that we're suffering in terms of our problems. We have allowed the cancer of corruption. We have allowed the cancer of corruption. We have allowed the cancer of lawlessness. We have allowed the cancer of patois. Yeah, because that's not a language of development, to be so pervasive that our people can't even think. Because do you know that it's through a language that allows you to think? And if you don't have a language that is producing science and, you know, religion, well, we have the Patois New Testament right now. But how many people are reading that? And how many people are literate to read the the Bible in the Creole? I think they would probably do a better job or understand better if it's read to them in English, even if they can't read. I think the Jamaican who is illiterate would prefer if the Bible were read to them in English, right? What has happened to us? Because even in the United States, when the slaves came off the plantation, they were so hungry for education that it was a short time that many of them became literate because they hungered for education and they spoke their slave language, right? They spoke their slave language, but they wanted to speak and to master the language of their slave masters and the language of economic prosperity and development, right? We fool ourselves in Jamaica, on the other hand, that if we continue to speak patois, nothing is wrong with patois. We should be just like nothing, well, I shouldn't say nothing's wrong with our food because some of the food we eat are also not healthy. We can admit to the fact that a lot of the food that we eat in Jamaica, though tasty and might be delicious to our palates, are not healthy for our bodies. And this is why we're having diabetes and we're all having all sorts of diseases in Jamaica to confront. Okay? So the same thing for not because something was bequeathed to us by our ancestors, be they our parents or grandparents, whomever they are, doesn't mean that we want to continue it. Yes, we can say we respect the fact that they could not change their reality, but those of us, their posterity, who can change our social and economic reality ought to do so. So we understand that the Jamaican Creole is not a language of development. It's a language of entertainment. It's a language where it's a heart language, where we can come and we can chat and we can talk about what life is about and, sing up two songs and we enjoy ourselves in the language. But we know that it is not a language that is going to produce science, technology, right? We know it's not going to do that. So why do we continue to believe that we're so important and we have to keep this language because if we don't, then we're not Jamaicans? That is not so, because the language does not make you Jamaican or not, right? Some of the probably more patriotic Jamaicans are the ones who don't use the Creole. Why? Because they read their history. They understand the history because patois, there's no history in patois about Jamaica. Do you know a book? Has Carolyn Cooper and the Professor Devonish, have they yet written a book in the Creole in which they have documented or have they employed historians to have documented our history, Jamaican history in the Jamaican Creole? They have not done so. I don't know of a book, and we do not have the economic resources to produce these books. We don't even have the publishing house to do that, right? So we need to confront the fact that if we want to also be developed, be civilized, and to be able to be compared to first world countries, that we have to use the language of our slave masters. Because a language is not something that is going to enslave you. It's the lack of language often that enslaves us. Because a language helps you to think, right? And why do you think we have revisionist history? Not only for Black people, but for any ethnic group. It is because sometimes the government tells you something, they produce something, and because you have mastered English or Spanish or Portuguese or whatever language you speak, you can go back and you can delve into that research the government has published and challenge the government on what he or she has said. In Jamaica, because we do not have that linguistic competence, we have to rely on things the government tell us. We have to rely on what the government tell us, that this is so, and because we think that this is so, right? Because we think that this is so because the government, we don't have the brains to be able to confront the government. Somebody's telling me that I'm a genius for, well, I think he was being sarcastic, rather, for itemizing the fact that the poverty rates could not have gone down. It doesn't take a genius. It takes somebody from primary school to see the level of poverty in Jamaica. That things, the more things change, the more they remain the same. When you look at New Kingston and other parts of Kingston, apart from some high-rise buildings going up and a few restaurants that you might see, is there any fundamental change there when you go back to Jamaica? None whatsoever. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. Okay? We're still operating within the decades of the 1970s for the most part. We're in the 1970s. We have moved from the 1970s. I have been saying to you that the truck of economic and social development is still parked up there. I don't know where it is, where it's parked, but wherever it's in Jamaica, it's there. Well, I should say all over Jamaica. It's just parked. Can't move. We can't find the engine and the gas and the petrol, whatever, to resuscitate, or we can't even buy a new truck. So to come on board with some fresh thoughts, some fresh ideas, some fresh concepts of development, because we don't want to confront the truth that we have failed. We have failed. We have failed as a people to develop ourselves. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have not produced world-class people. I'm not suggesting that some of our citizens have not risen above the economic and social challenges and have done well in their lives, but that is not the rule. Those are the exceptions. Those are the exceptions, and we credit them, we laud their efforts for doing so. But we understand that many are left behind. Many are left behind, and it is a system that is deliberate. Look at the whole notion of education. And I pointed out the other day when Peter Estute wrote in his paper the number of schools that we have built since we gained independence. And it's not because we did not get money, as he suggested, from the World Bank and maybe other institutions, but we opted not to use it to build new schools. We did so to gain more votes, to polarize our people, and not to educate them. Because the whole goal, the plantocracy in Jamaica remains intact. The plantocracy in Jamaica remains intact. Both the plantocracy and the colonial system is there. And if you want to understand what a plantation was, just go to Jamaica. You will see it. It's just right there. It's palpable. It's there in your eyes that this country is really a plantation, and that you can go so far and no more. That the elites in the upper echelons of society don't allow you to go 1 inch higher than you should go. Why you must stay in your place. Stand in your place. That's the society in which we live. That is the society in which we live. And we're seeing the same thing with the likes of Usain Bolt and his inability to get back his money. And I saw the audacity of the Prime Minister of Jamaica and Bruce Golding and all these people who went to his father's funeral. They had the audacity, and the way in which they're treating him. But maybe they probably think they might get some money, or it's just for optics. Optics, right? How many Jamaicans die in a very brutal way and these people go to their funerals, right? Because these people are not important. Usain Bolt is important because he has a couple dollars, right? And they place value on him because of his economic standing, right? Not because of who Usain Bolt is, someone who represents the typical Jamaican. Apart, outside of his athletic prowess and the fact that he was able to garner some money from the proceeds of that prowess, he would have been insignificant in the eyes of Jamaicans. People would not have looked at him, right? That is how the society is. That is how the society is. And this is going to allow me now to segue into the whole concept that Jamaica does not need a data-driven economy. We need a people-centric, a people-driven economy. We're living in a world in which data is at the center of everything we do, at our health, education, economics, and I don't have any problems against data. But we must understand that we are not robots, and what works today might not work tomorrow, right? What metric that was used today might not be the metric that is going to be used tomorrow. I give you, there's an article written here back in the Jamaica Gleaner in which the author here is suggesting, right? Poverty statistics counting eggs before they are laid. And this is a response to the assertion of the PIOJ and the Prime Minister, in which they're saying poverty rates have gone down, have trended down, have declined significantly. The writer says Prime Minister Andrew Holness recently announced that Jamaica's poverty rate has been cut in half, now reportedly standing at 8.2%. While this headline grabs attention, it warrants deeper scrutiny, not celebration, especially during an election cycle where optimism can be weaponized and statistics selectively interpreted. Very well said. The writer went on to say, as an academic and author of Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, I have long studied the metrics and myths that surround poverty reporting in post-colonial economies. Jamaica is no stranger to fluctuations in poverty. We've had moments of apparent prosperity before, apparent, only for them to unravel quickly due to geopolitical shifts, natural disasters, external debt obligations, IMF structural adjustments, and internal governance issues. The real question is this, and he's asking, what methodology underpins this 8.2% figure? Are we still measuring poverty solely by average income per day, a narrow and outdated standard? Or are we accounting for productive capacity, sustainable employment, access to social goods, and resilience against economic shocks? Poverty is more than a number. And that's very important. We do not want just a number. We have to look at social realities. It's about whether Jamaicans can not only survive, but thrive. And that requires policies rooted in long-term vision, not short-term optics. And that's what we're doing. Fellow academics, he's saying now, fellow academics, which he is one, policymakers and journalists should not take this statistic at face value. Hard questions need to be asked, and I've been saying that. Investigate the data. Demand transparency. This is not cynicism. This is not cynicism he's suggesting here. It's responsibility. This is not cynicism. It's responsibility. We cannot afford to count eggs before they're laid, especially if there may be no eggs at all. And it's coming from Ronaldo Mackenzie. Well-written letter to the editor. And these are the type of letters, the type of thinking, the type of writing that we need. Here is a fellow Jamaican, who is able to confront the truth. We don't know what the truth is, and that's what he's suggesting. But intellectual integrity requires that we question everything we hear, every data we see, every statistics that are published, because we know that we are in an election cycle and the government is going to come and present a lot of propaganda, because the government's purpose is to win. And if you were there in office, wouldn't you want to win? I'm not hitting the government, I'm hitting us for being so stupid. I'm not hitting because the government has to use its strategies, its tools to win. It's in for the winning game. It's not there to lose. It's not in the game of politics to lose because financial interests are tied up within the whole matter of politics. But Jamaicans don't want to admit our anemic economic position. We don't want to really face up to the realities. And that is why, as I'm suggesting, and I will say it every time I come here, when foreigners go to Jamaica and they look at the shelves and they begin to make comparisons in terms of the cost of living, you shun them and you curse them out and you behave illiterate. Even Jamaicans in the diaspora, stupid. Things are expensive in London. Things are also expensive in New York. We know that. But the fact of the matter is that those are still industrialized countries, even though they're suffering right now, but they're still way ahead of Jamaica's economic position, way ahead. And if they can be complaining, about what is happening there and their inability to buy food. Yesterday, I read an article in which most Americans are complaining, about 70%, about the high cost of living, including for basic necessities, food, housing, right? They are complaining. Now, the article published by CBS went on to suggest that according to a research done by the Ludwig Institute there in the United States, that even though the government officials that in the United States have published that their unemployment rate is down to 4.2, but that is not true according to the research done. When they look at the undergrounds and they look at the real realities of the people that, bedevil the people, they're seeing that the unemployment rate in the United States is at a whopping 24%, right? And it could be higher. But what we're suggesting here, you just can't look at numbers. You've got to look at the social realities also. So just don't tell me that you're just having, because the government says that unemployment rate is down 4.2, I must just say the economy is doing well. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris did. And she just rigged out, right? She dished out to the people what the data coming from the government data houses were suggesting, and she lost the election. And Andrew Holness is facing a similar plight if he does not tread cautiously, because it might look now that short term you have this sense of, I have accomplished, I have done something. But let me tell you the truth, Jamaicans. Let me tell you now the unvarnished truth. The problems that afflict modern Jamaica, and by extension the world, no man is going to be able to solve them. No man. It requires now a miraculous power, a supernatural power to solve them. Why? Because they are problems caused by us because of lies that we have told ourselves. It's like lying to your body about your health, saying that you don't have cancer even though you do. Now, if you do not face up to the reality that you have cancer, which we know that we have not been functioning well economically for years, Jamaicans know that, the leaders know that we have not been doing well since we became independent, right? They know that, but they have been denying that. So problems such as your health, the cancer begins to deteriorate. The cancer begins to deteriorate and to spread throughout your body. Our poverty, which we have allowed since independence, has spread throughout every nook and cranny of the Jamaican society. And I don't think at this juncture of the history, just like a stage 4 cancer, it can be done if we ask God for wisdom and knowledge and understanding, but it's going to require, as I'm suggesting, supernatural assistance. No man is going to be able to solve the poverty problem, the economic malaise in Jamaica. No man, the crime problem, no man will be able, not even me. And I'm not suggesting that I have the solutions. What I'm here suggesting is to let you know that why lie to ourselves? When if we sit down and we humble ourselves and we pray before God and ask him for the wisdom and knowledge and understanding, then he will impress on our minds what we need to do. But we can't walk around lying to each other, saying that we are well, that Jamaica is economically well off, when we know we have multiple factors to suggest otherwise, that we don't speak well, right? We are not using a language of development, that we are not a law-abiding society. We're just not. We're a lawless society. We are unproductive, right? A little rain falls, and Jamaicans sometimes, they show up late, they don't want to work, right? We are unproductive. Low education, poor skills, right? And a high level of brain drain, the second in the world, not in the Caribbean, in the world. So you tell me now, why would Jamaicans risk their lives to go to the United States and other countries, right? Because they're so desperately wanting to leave Jamaica. If we were so prosperous, right? Because that's what the government is telling us. That according to Andrew Holness, his policies have enabled Jamaicans to be gainfully employed. That's what he suggested. And people are asking, where are the jobs? Where are the gainful employment? Right? People are not seeing it. And this is the question that we need to pose to our leaders. They need to ask these questions. But Jamaicans, you've got to confront the truth. Jamaica, wonderful country, beautiful isle, right? With breathtaking beaches, and the mountains, majestic. But that's the physical environment. The social and the economic landscape is not a pretty sight. Is not a pretty sight, and it has blighted the physical landscape and the physical beauty and majesty of the island. So let's now come together, begin to spill truth, to speak the truth. Though the heavens fall, be brave, be courageous. And even though men may attack you, right? They may ridicule you, they may deride you for speaking the truth. But rest assured, let me tell you something. And I hope that you're liking the videos and you're subscribing to the channel. Make sure you like the video and you subscribe to the channel. Sometimes I do forget to tell you that, but you need to do that. You're required to do that. That is how you share the videos. The videos are not going to be shared if you do not like them and subscribe to the channel. And I think of the viewers I'm seeing, only, I think you have 30-something% who have subscribed. So I think I still have over 60-something% of people who have not yet subscribed to the channel. Why are you viewing the videos? Just subscribe to the channel. It doesn't take you a buck. Just hit the subscription button and become a part of the Rumination family. But I had to do these videos because I realized that there is a dearth of credible information, of critically derived information in our country, that our people don't want to think. And if they're thinking people, they're not courageous enough to risk careers, to risk their stature and their titles, their standing in society, to speak truth. Because if you are going to speak truth in today's society, you have to be willing to stand alone, because there is this herd mentality. Particularly now as we're in the age of technology, everybody's on TikTok and YouTube, and everybody's saying the same thing, right? Everybody's saying the same thing. And if you speak something that there's a way from orthodoxy, then you are crazy, you're stupid, you don't have any sense, right? And this is what you can say all you want to say. I am a person of integrity, and I know the truth hurts. It hurts me too, because when I see what people say about Jamaica, especially outside of Jamaica, I feel embarrassed. But some of the things are, of course, because they envy us, but a large amount of what they say are truths that we must confront. We must confront. And if we don't confront these truths, we're never going to grow and to develop as a society. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you like, share, and subscribe. Like the videos. The videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. Begin now to speak truth.